Right. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 12:15 a.m. And of course, it is the 28th of April 2025. How are you guys doing this beautiful midnight? Okay. A lot is going on for sure. And now something really intriguing is going on in the Trump administration. But with that being said, thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, and let's get it going.
What a nice guy he is. I wanted to race him, but I decided not to do it.
A message to Vladimir Putin after your meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, and how did that meeting go?
I think the meeting went well. We'll see what happens over the next few days. We'll probably learn a lot. I was very disappointed that missiles were flying by Russia, but that missiles were flying. Very disappointing. We'll see how it goes. On the Iran situation, I think we're doing very well. I think a deal's going to be made there. That's going to happen. Pretty sure it's going to happen. We'll have something without having to start dropping bombs all over the place.
Trust President Putin?
Say it again.
You trust President Putin?
You know, in about 2 weeks. You did very nice at the dinner the other night. I was very proud of you. They had your picture up, everything. Very proud of you. I said, I know him.
What did Zelensky tell you that made you reassured?
Well, it wasn't that. It was just, look, they have a tough road ahead, okay? And we had a good meeting. It was a nice meeting. It was a beautiful meeting. I'll tell you, it's the nicest office I've ever seen. It was a beautiful, beautiful scene. But he was very, look, he wants to do something good for his country. Thinks he's doing a good job, and he's working hard. We'll see what happens. It's a very complicated deal.
What did he tell you, Mr. President?
He told me that he needs more weapons, but he's been saying that for 3 years, He needs more weapons, and we're going to see what happens. I want to see what happens with respect to Russia. Because Russia, I've been surprised and disappointed, very disappointed that they did the bombing of those places after discussions.
Are you going to talk to Putin again?
Yeah, I will.
Did President Zelensky talk to you about Crimea?
Well, he did, very briefly, but Crimea was given away by Barack Hussein Obama and by Biden.
Barack
That's 11
Hussein
or 12
Obama.
years ago. That's a long time ago. I don't know how you can bring up Crimea, because that's been a long time. Nobody brought it up for 12 years, and now they bring it up now. So I told them, you can maybe go back to Obama, ask him why they gave it up. They gave it up without a shot being fired, by the way.
What do you want Vladimir Putin to do?
Well, I want him to stop shooting, sit down, and sign a deal. And we have the confines of a deal, I believe, and I want him to sign it and be done with it and just go back to life.
What punitive action are you considering taking against Russia?
Well,
What are you doing?
fired, by the way.
What do you want Vladimir Putin to do?
Well, I want him to stop shooting, sit down, and sign a deal. And we have the confines of a deal, I believe, and I want him to sign it and be done with it and just go back to life.
What punitive action are you considering taking against Russia?
Well, I
know
have a
it's
lot
your
of things
social-
I can do. I'm
Yeah.
not looking to do it, but I have a lot of strength. We built the United States up. I think we're more respected now as a country maybe than ever before. There's no more games. You have somebody that knows what he's doing, not like the previous person who didn't have a clue. So, I want to end that. I want to end the Iran situation if we can. And we have other things too. You know, we got plenty of problems in the world. You know, when I left 4.5 years ago, I left, and I'll tell you what, we didn't have any of these problems. The good news is costs are way down, groceries are down, eggs are down, gasoline is way down. It's all coming down. It's all looking good. The tariffs are strong. It's we're taking in a lot of money from tariffs. We were losing a lot before I got here. We were losing billions of dollars a day, and now we're doing great, and we haven't even kicked in yet. And eventually we'll be reducing taxes very substantially for the people of our country because the money is so great coming in from tariffs that I'll be able to reduce taxes to a very large extent and maybe almost completely.
So he's saying that he may totally eliminate taxes. Isn't that just wild?
Yet. And eventually we'll be reducing taxes very substantially for the people of our country because the money is so great coming in from tariffs that I'll be able to reduce taxes to a very large extent and maybe almost completely.
Keep saying 2 weeks about President Putin. What is 2 weeks? Give us, what is the actual date? What is the timeline?
2 weeks or less, and if it's a little more at the time, I say, but you know, they're losing a lot of people. We have 3,000-4,000 people dying every single week. That's a lot of people to lose. You can imagine parents waving from Ukraine and from Russia, waving to their son as he leaves, and you know, a week later he's dead on a battlefield, all carved up and chopped up. I've seen it. I see the satellite pictures. They're horrible. They're horrible. I would say it can't get any worse. Body parts laying all over. I don't even like looking at them. Body parts laying all over fields. What are they doing? It would have never started if I were president.
Is your relationship with President Zelensky better now than things were in the Oval Office?
It was never bad. We had a little dispute because I disagreed with something he said, and the cameras were rolling, and that was okay with me. But we had a dispute. But look, he's in a tough situation. It's a very tough situation. He's fighting a much bigger force, much bigger, and that force has not been very distinguished. You know, it's been a lot tougher than they thought, but it helped them when we gave them $350 billion worth of weapons or cash.
Is Zelensky ready to give up Crimea, do you think, Mr. President?
Oh, I think so, yeah. Look, Crimea was 12 years ago. That was President Obama. They gave it up without a shot being fired. So don't talk to me about Crimea. Talk to Obama and Biden about Crimea.
I was just wondering what Zelensky thought
And
about
remember,
it.
this is Biden's war. This isn't Trump's war. I came in to try and
that's true.
solve a problem. And the
That's
problem
true. This
is
is
so many
straight
people are
up
being killed.
Biden's war.
By the way, Saquon, what a great guy.
Sir, can I ask?
You see the conditioning. His conditioning's pretty good. Better than you, better than me.
Sir, can I ask? Did you have a reaction to Virginia Guthrie's suicide? Do you have a reaction to Virginia Guthrie's suicide in Australia?
Well, it's a very sad situation, the whole thing. That whole situation is very sad, her and others. And so certainly that's a horrible thing, horrible.
One more on Zelensky. You know, the last meeting you had was pretty rough. Did you sense a different attitude now? And if so,
I
why?
do, I see it. I see him as calmer. I think he understands the picture. And I think he wants to make a deal. I don't know if he wanted to make a deal. I think he wants to make a deal.
Thank you, sir.
President,
Thank
did
you.
you
Good
talk
job.
to, did you talk to anyone about tariffs yesterday? Did any foreign leaders approach you and ask for...
I did, and you probably saw. I think every foreign leader approached me and said hello, and a lot of good relationships. And we're going to be taking in a tremendous amount of money. We're going to be taking in a lot of jobs, a lot of plants and factories. They're already coming. I mean, you see it. And we're going to make a lot of money, and we're going to cut taxes for the people of this country. It'll take a little while before we do that, but we're going to be cutting taxes, and it's possible we'll do a complete tax cut because I think the tariffs will be enough to cut all of the income tax. Now, we have a lot of debt that's been left to us, unfortunately, over many years. We'll take care of that, but the tariffs, if people only understood the tariffs, we're going to be giving people of this country a tremendous tax cut. And we're going to start with people making less than $200,000 a year.
Is there any movement on
China?
Because the China said you
A
had
little
to
bit. Look, a little bit. They want to make a deal, obviously. Right now, they're not doing business with us. You know, people talk about going cold turkey with China, meaning just forget about it. We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year with China, and now they're not doing any business with us, you know, not because of them, because of me. Because at 145%, you can't do business. But something's going to happen that's going to be positive.
Did you and the First Lady have a nice birthday dinner on the
We had a great dinner. She's a great First Lady. People loved her. And the funeral was beautiful. It was a beautiful funeral. As funerals go, it was a beautiful funeral.
The Wisconsin judge is being prosecuted by the FBI for sheltering someone that ICE was trying to detain. Do you have any thoughts about that Wisconsin judge?
Well, I think it's horrible. I think the whole thing is horrible with judges, with what's going on, and they shouldn't be doing that. That's very dangerous territory. And we have to be able to do what I ran on. I ran on a campaign of taking criminals out of our country, murderers, drug dealers, people that are insane, moved out of insane asylums and mental institutions. These are insane people. And I won on the fact that we're going to be doing this. We have to be allowed to do it. Otherwise, we're not going to have a country any longer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Close. Nobody comes close to how hard this man works. Nobody. He's traveling. He's answering questions. He's always talking to the media. Nobody.
To Russia's war on Ukraine, strung along by the Russian president. Trump wrote, here's part of it, "It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along." Well, this follows Trump's 15-minute meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky just before the funeral of Pope Francis. CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak has more for us. Kevin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Victor. You know, those photos inside St. Peter's Basilica were so notable. These two men, President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, sitting knee to knee, deep in conversation about the conflict in Ukraine. But I think it was what the president wrote on Truth Social as he left Rome on Air Force One heading here to New Jersey that was so notable. The president offering a stern rebuke, not of Zelensky, who has been the subject of so much of his ire, but of Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, referencing specifically Russia's assault on Kyiv over the last week. It was the worst bombardment of the Ukrainian capital since last summer, and the president wrote, "There was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, cities and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions." So you hear there a real shift in the president's tone. You know, it was only on Thursday when I asked the president inside the cabinet room at the White House whether he thought Putin was serious about reaching a peace deal after this assault on Kyiv, and the president was pretty adamant. He thought both sides of this conflict did want to strike an agreement, did want to reach a peace. Now the president is voicing a lot more concern about whether Putin could be serious about this. He's essentially lending voice to the concerns that a lot of European leaders have had over the last several months, that Putin may be playing for time, that he thinks he has the upper hand and thinks that he can string President Trump out as he tries to resolve this conflict. And so clearly the president is frustrated that his attempts to bring this war to an end have so far not been fruitful. Remember, he said he would be able to resolve this conflict within 24 hours of taking office. Now he's butting up on the 100-day mark of his presidency, and so far there is no peace. Most of his ire has been directed at Zelensky over the course of the last several months. He has called him, he has said that he's not a fan of the Ukrainian president. There was that blow up in the Oval Office. But now it appears that the president is placing at least some of the blame on Putin. And that's a notable shift and certainly something to keep an eye on as this war continues to grind forward. Victor?
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. You set the table. Let's now have the conversation with Kim Dozier, CNN Global Affairs Analyst. Kim, good morning to you. So let's start here. You're encouraged by the characterization from both leaders about that conversation at the Basilica, the imagery, the social media postings. Why?
Well, this was the reset that Ukraine and especially Zelensky really needed after that Oval Office meeting, but also a one-on-one with President Trump allowed Zelensky to rebuild the relationship that had been broken by years of Trump seeing Zelensky as the one who refused to investigate Hunter Biden in his first term. Zelensky being portrayed over and over in conservative media as ungrateful and even associated with some of the hardline military units that have been called Nazis inside Ukraine. Instead, what we got to see was the two men having this obvious heart-to-heart. Meanwhile, the opening was created by Putin and Russia. Every time this past week that Trump has asked Vladimir Putin to stop the attacks, instead, we've had another night, just like last night, of hundreds of drones and missiles hitting various cities in Ukraine and killing people. And that seems to have really gotten Trump's attention. Hey, this guy isn't listening to me.
All right, so let's talk about the path forward here, because although they both said that it was a positive conversation, and the pictures look like they're having an intense conversation, only lasted 15 minutes, but you can get something done in 15 minutes. The President Trump, told Time magazine that Crimea will stay with Russia. The president speaks about Russia tapping him along as if that's some revelation. Starmer, Macron, they've been saying that for months now. So are they really any closer to a deal?
Yeah, here's where we get to the hard part. The two proposals, the one put forward by Ukraine and Europe and the one put forward by the U.S., which feels like it was dictated by Vladimir Putin, are very far apart. The current U.S. deal would basically allow Russia to keep everything it's holding, Crimea, but also the current territory that it's occupying, and have very few security guarantees. Ukraine wants reassurances. They want NATO troops on the ground, individually represented, not under the banner of NATO, to make sure that Russia can't invade again. And the White House hasn't fully embraced that yet. So will this moment of goodwill lead to any changes in those proposals? I did speak to one Ukrainian official earlier this week who was briefed on the talks, and they said, look, it doesn't look good, but this is what happens in negotiations. You bring the two impossible wish lists together, and then you start bargaining. Before this, we didn't even have anything written down from the U.S. administration. Now we have something to work from. And I think you also might see a signing of a mineral deal as soon as this week to keep that momentum going and to keep Trump thinking, hey, Ukraine is actually working with us. It's Moscow that's working against us.
Yeah, also coming this week, the 100-day mark, and that marker might also offer some urgency to get something accomplished that you can say you did within the first 100 days. The potential for sanctions mentioned in the president's social media post, the banking or secondary sanctions, what's the potency of those, considering the sanctions that were levied by the U.S., Western Europe, during the first year and a half of this war? They weren't deterrents.
They still didn't go after the oil as much as they could, Russia's oil sales. They allowed Europe, India, China to keep buying oil and natural gas from Russia. So I have spoken to Trump administration officials, current and former, who say they can think of ways to tighten up, to make Vladimir Putin feel more economic pain. Let's see, though, if that's just a tweet or that more bad behavior leads to an actual levying of new sanctions, which would at least be a symbolic hit against Putin and might make him sit up and take notice.
Kimberly Dozier, always good to start with you on a Sunday morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. All right, with everything going on right now in the United States, guess what else is going on? Check this out. Trump 2028 merch is selling out. People are saying they want Trump 2028, ladies and gentlemen. This is Trump's website. Okay. This is Trump.com. All right. It says experience the world 45th, 47th. And when you keep going down here, you see. Whoa. Where is it? He was here. He was just here. Trump 2028, ladies and gentlemen. Trump 2028 is selling out. Okay. But what do you guys think about Trump 2028, man? I don't know. I don't know, man. Because it's like, yo, we need to focus on this 4 years we got right here first. Okay? Before y'all start talking about Trump 2028. But anyway, Trump 2028, they've started selling merch. And this could just be for, trolling, because Trump is a huge troll. Everybody knows that. He knows how to get the attention of anybody he wants to get. His enemies, his friends, his whatever, foes, the media, American people. He knows how to get everybody's attention. So that's not even like a conversation. But anyway, here you have it. The hat goes for $50. The hat goes for $50, ladies and gentlemen. Trump 2028. I don't know. I mean, you're gonna make money off of this for sure. You're gonna make a lot of money off of this because people are buying and stuff. However, we should be focused on these 4 years. Let's make sure we get the best trade deals. Make sure we get everything we're supposed to get. And whatever happens, happens. But Trump 2028 right now is just crazy work, yo. It is straight up crazy work, yo. This is 2025.
You guys had a cover of the US dollar, as I recall, shaped like a rocket ship going up, and the cover line was the envy of the world. And today, this week, you have a badly damaged American eagle looking like it needs, restorative surgery on many fronts. What has changed in this short period?
Well, the administration has changed, and we have a new administration engaged in a revolutionary project to remake America's foreign policy, to completely transform its economy, to attack independent institutions, law firms, universities, the Federal Reserve Chairman. And that's led to massive shocks, a massive geopolitical shock, but most importantly, as Ken Griffin said, a dramatic economic shock in the form of the tariffs, a huge self-inflicted wound. And so suddenly the United States, from being an incredibly successful economy, which is what we were highlighting last year, has put these enormously self-inflicted wounds and is becoming a place where outsiders look and think, is this a credible economy? We can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. Institutions, credibility, the rule of law, all the things that people took for granted in the US are now being questioned. And we have another huge number of days to go.
So Ray, your Bridgewater, the firm you founded, put out a report a couple of days ago, and it says, it reflects what Zanny was saying and says that all of this produces huge risks. We expect a policy-induced slowdown, including a probability of a recession. The Fed is going to be less able to handle this, and so there are risks of stagflation, the combination of slow growth and inflation. U.S. corporates are under threat. There's exceptional risk to U.S. assets. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, by and large, I'd agree with that. I don't think it covers what's going on, so let me just clarify. We have a problem with the debt. We have a problem with internal order, democracy as we know it, the system. We have a problem of a geopolitical order, rising power, challenging an existing power in that global environment. These things exist as the backdrop of this set of circumstances. Now there's been volatility. There's been, yes, in my opinion.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is you seem to be reluctant to comment directly.
No, I'll comment directly.
What are the effects of the Trump administration's policies in the last 100 days economically?
The effects of those policies economically is to bring to the surface issues about the polarity that exists. And at the same time, it's doing it in a volatile way that is causing trouble in terms of the volatility of that.
Okay.
So it is dealing with problems, and at the same time, it is the way it is dealing with problems could be done more smoothly, more cooperatively to produce a less volatile result.
Zanny, let me ask you. You said we're still not out of the woods, and is because many of these tariffs have just been paused. You're talking about negotiating with dozens and dozens of countries simultaneously. Assume the best case scenario that they get a bunch of trade deals with most of these countries. I want to keep China for later. You still are at a situation where tariffs will be much higher, right? I mean, American tariffs were around 2.5%. I don't know where they will end up, but they're clearly going to be somewhere between 10 and 20% now. So does that itself, I mean, that alone changes the economic outlook, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this has been the single biggest tariff increase in history. US tariffs, as you say, were around 2%. They went above 20%. They're well above 20% now. It's a tenfold increase. And Ray is an expert on long-term economic trends. And I agree with him. There are fundamental challenges facing the US, particularly the size of the budget deficit. But what I think is undisputable is that this administration has chosen an economic course, this enormous increase in tariffs, which pretty much every economist will tell you is completely self-defeating. Whatever you hear, this is a tax on consumers. It's likely to push the economy into recession. But more important.
So how do we fix the trade deficit? How do we fix the trade deals that we have? For example, China. Okay. What do you propose? Nothing. Keep it the way it is, which is take full advantage of the United States.
Than that is that it is eroding investors' faith in the dollar. And the dollar is the absolute basis of the global financial system. US treasuries are the safest of safe assets. And what we've seen right now is that in the last few weeks is that investors are worrying about US assets because you're seeing the stock market fall, you're seeing bond yields rise, bond prices fall, and the dollar fall. And that kind of simultaneous falling of pretty much every asset is something that you can see in emerging markets when they have a crisis. But it's not what you expect in the United States. And because the United States, as Ray has written, is sort of at the basis of the global financial system, that is what is seriously dangerous right now. We could, at some point, and I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but there's an uncomfortably high risk that we have a serious dollar crisis as investors move out secularly of US assets. And that would be catastrophic, even worse than the impact of this enormous tariff increase. And frankly, all of that is, to me, the wrong medicine for the problems that the US has. I happen to think the US economy is in much better shape than many people do. But with this self-inflicted wound, it is really hurting itself and causing potentially enormous damage to the rest of the world too.
Well, the rest of the world is not the primary concern. Americans are the primary concern. Okay, so Trump has to think about Americans first, then the rest of the world. Okay. Anyway, Marco Rubio had an interview with NBC.
And joining me now is Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Secretary Rubio, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning. Thanks.
Well, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. President Trump is about to mark his 100th day in office. It comes as a key campaign promise is to end the war in Ukraine, and against the backdrop of that extraordinary meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky. Mr. Secretary, is Russia and Ukraine now closer to a deal in the wake of that meeting?
Well, I think they're closer in general than they've been any time in the last 3 years, but it's still not there. And as I said, and he has said, and others have said, he's done an extraordinary job at the highest levels of our government. The president has put out everybody you can imagine, Ambassador Witkoff, myself, the National Security Advisor, the Vice President, been involved and engaged in this effort to bring the two sides closer so we can have path to peace. By the way, that's something that should be celebrated. He's trying to end a 3-year war that has no military solution, where every day people are dying, especially on the Ukrainian side, in many cases civilians and children, as we've seen the images over the last few weeks. He's trying to bring this war to an end, and we've made real progress. But those last couple steps of this journey were always going to be the hardest ones, and it needs to happen soon. We cannot continue as I said, to dedicate time and resources to this effort if it's not going to come to fruition. So the last week has really been about figuring out how close are these sides really, and are they close enough that this merits a continued investment of our time as a mediator in this regard.
What is the timeline? Are you talking weeks or months? How long are you willing to give them to reach a peace agreement?
Well, I always think it's silly to set a specific date or whatever, but I can just tell you that almost 100 days into this presidency, the president has dedicated a tremendous amount of time and energy to this. And we think we brought the sides closer than they've been in a very long time, but we're not there yet, and it needs to start happening. We need to start, I think this is going to be a very critical week. This week is going to be a really important week in which we have to make a determination about whether this is an endeavor that we want to continue to be involved in, or if it's time to sort of focus on some other issues that are...
It's just wild that all of this, in my opinion, is a ploy to get Volodymyr Zelensky to figure out how to get him to sign the rare earth deal, and also to make Putin feel like, you know what? Look, you cannot be doing what you're doing, which what is doing is crazy anyway. Killing innocent people. And really, the war between Ukraine and Russia, the moment it stops, world's economy would be better. Like the next day. Stock market is going to the moon as soon as that war ends. Like, once Russia stops, man, it's only up from here, bro.
Equally, if not more important in some cases. But we want to see it happen. There are reasons to be optimistic, but there are reasons to be realistic, of course, as well. We're close, but we're not close enough.
Well, let's talk about what we've heard from and seen from President Trump online, who now says he wants to deal with President Putin, quote, differently through banking or secondary sanctions. Will President Trump follow through with imposing new sanctions against Russia?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to, the president, we have multiple options, frankly, to address this and to deal with all of this, but we don't want to get to that point. This is still not the time. I think what the president is saying and has been saying for some time now is he is aware that he has these options. People ask him about it all the time, but what he really wants is a peace deal. He wants the dying and the killing to stop. This is a terrible war. It's cost the lives of thousands of people, billions of dollars, and generational destruction on the side, especially on the Ukrainian side. We want the war to end. You saw yesterday at the Pope's Mass, there was talk about war and how it needed to stop. The Pope, the late Pope, who's celebrated for being a peacemaker and trying to talk about these things. We should all be happy that we have a president of the United States and Donald J. Trump who wants to end and prevent wars. And that's what we're trying to do here. And so ultimately, look, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't come come to fruition, then as a nation state, there are options that we have for those who we hold responsible for not wanting the peace. But we'd prefer not to get to that stage yet because we think it closes the door to diplomacy.
Well, you know, the president has made a number of demands against Ukraine. Just last month, the president told me he might impose penalties against Russia. I guess given the frustrations that he is voicing, Mr. Secretary, why hasn't he imposed sanctions yet?
Well, because I think we're still hoping to see that this effort works out in diplomacy and that we can bring these two sides closer together. I mean, the minute you start doing that kind of stuff, you're walking away from it. You've now doomed yourself to another 2 years of war, and we don't want to see it happen. I think what's important and really weighs is there is no other country. There is no other institution or organization on the earth that can bring these two sides together. No one else is talking to both sides but us. And no one else in the world can make something like this happen but the president. This is a very significant responsibility and a really important opportunity. And we want to make sure that we work it all the way through, that we don't walk away from something that can actually work or that can actually lead to peace, but we also don't want to continue to spend time on something that's not going to get us there. So throughout this process, it's about determining, do both sides really want peace, and how close are they or how far apart they are after 90 days of effort here, over 90 days of effort. That's what we're trying to determine this week. There are reasons to be optimistic, and there are also reasons to be concerned. It's complicated. If this was an easy war to end, it would have been ended by someone else a long time ago. But right now, the only one who can bring these two sides together to end this war is our president, President Trump. And we're doing everything we can to see if we can get that done here over the next few days.
Well, let me ask you about some of the language you've taken. Just 3 years ago, you co-sponsored a Senate bill barring the United States from recognizing Russian claims to any portion of Ukraine's land. Let me read you part of what you said. Quote, Vladimir Putin is the real aggressor in this war, and he is attempting an unjustified takeover of a sovereign democratic country. The United States cannot recognize Putin's claims, or we risk establishing a dangerous precedent for other authoritarian regimes like the Chinese Communist Party to imitate. What message does it send to China and other adversaries if the United States allows Russia to keep the land it's illegally claimed?
Well, first of all, I would say that right now there's a lot of press reports about this, that, or these concessions or that concessions. A lot of things have been discussed, and the reason why those things are being discussed is very simple. Not because we're going to force anyone to do anything or pressure anyone to do anything like this, but because we need to understand what are the options to bringing about an end to the war. We need to be grown-ups and realistic here. In any negotiated end to a war, both sides get something and both sides have to give something up. That's a reality. Without speaking specifically about that or another, you wrote that, you talk about that was back in September of 2022. Since September of 2022, this war has continued. Thousands of more people have died. Generational destruction that Ukraine's going to spend 2 generations rebuilding from. This is a war that needs to end now. And so in order for this war to end, there are things Russia wants that it will not get, and there are things Ukraine wants that it will not get. Yeah. If it wasn't the case, that would have been done a long time ago. No one here is claiming that one side is going to unconditionally surrender to the other and bring this to an end. But that's why diplomacy can be difficult and time-consuming, but it is the only way to end this conflict. There is no military solution to this war.
There's no way you would tell me Marco Rubio isn't some sort of high-level, skillful communicator. He is absolutely skillful. He is going to be a huge star in the Republican Party. And if he decides to run for president, he's most likely going to win, because I do not see any other candidate, even in the Republican Party, that could actually debate Marco Rubio. Because, I mean, to get the nomination, you have to debate, right? And you have to get the votes. But when it comes to vote, whoever Trump endorses is most likely going to get the vote for the Republican presidential nominee for 2028. But what I just wanted to say was Marco Rubio is a skillful communicator. And I would say, as a Secretary of State, Marco is definitely doing a fine job.
The only solution to this war is a negotiated settlement where both sides are going to have to give up something they claim to want and are going to have to give the other side something they wish they didn't. That's how you end wars, and that's what we're trying to achieve here, so more people won't die. There are people who will die today in this war because there is no peace. We don't want to continue to have to say that. Every time you turn on the news and they say, well, another missile strike, all these things will continue to happen. This could get even worse in the months to come.
Yeah, President Putin has never acknowledged Ukraine's right to exist. So why do you trust that he won't invade Ukraine again or another European country?
Well, I don't think peace deals are built on trust. I think peace deals have to be built on verification, have to be built on facts, have to be built on action, have to be built on realities. So this is not an issue of, of trust. It's an issue of building in these sorts of things, verification, security guarantees, things that have been discussed in the past. All these things are being talked about here. All of these things.
Yeah.
But right now, it's not the time. If we're trying to bring two sides together, the last thing you want to do is give one of the two sides, an excuse to walk away from this effort. We're just trying to achieve peace. At the end of the day, let me remind everybody, what we are trying to do is end a war that has cost a lot of money to us, to our allies, cost a lot of lives, destroyed a lot of lives, forced people by the millions to leave their country, millions of Ukrainians that no longer live in the country and have not been able to come back. We just want all this to stop. And we're trying to find whether we can play a role to make that happen. Everyone should hope that we're successful. Instead of rooting against President Trump, everyone should be hopeful that President Trump can bring this war to an end, because it truly, at this point, is not good for anybody.
Geez, how easy is this? This is just common sense. You should be rooting for Trump to be able to end what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. But you have some people saying, well, he said it was going to end it on day one. At least he is having conversations with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky and fighting for a peace deal every single time. Even during the Pope's funeral, this guy had the time to speak with Zelensky during the funeral. That's how important it is to him that peace comes to Ukraine. And I respect that.
May not work out. Peace deals are hard, but we are trying, and I think the president deserves credit for spending this much time and this much energy and these many resources to try to bring about this outcome of peace.
All right, Mr. Secretary, let's turn to China and the president's trade war. President Trump said he has spoken directly with President Xi Jinping. Chinese officials, though, say that no talks have taken place about a trade war. Can you help us to understand where this stands? Has President Trump spoken to President Xi after imposing those 145% tariffs?
Well, just like the previous answer, I think I'm not going to be commenting on who talked to who and what they talked about, because obviously this is also a high-stakes negotiation. The fundamental fact is this. For 30-something years, the Chinese have gotten away with unfair trade practices. Not just unfair, outrageously unfair trade practices. Yeah. Just very simple. Chinese companies can do whatever they want in America. American companies can only do what the Chinese allow them to do in China, and it's very limited, and every year it gets more and more limited. They flood, not just us, but they flood the world with exports, but they push back against any imports. They are 100% favorable to unfairly favorable to their companies and unfair to ours. They steal our intellectual property. Yeah. They reverse engineer things they get a hold of. It's on and on and on, unfair, and they've been allowed to get away with it. And finally, almost too late really, but finally we have a president that stood up to it. And it's not just us that needs to be standing up to it, by the way. Europe is concerned about the number of electric cars that China tried to dump on them. China's had trade problems with Canada and with others. This needs to stop. And so the bottom line is that the president is dealing with something that should have been dealt with a very long time ago, and it was almost too late.
So, Mr. Secretary, just to be clear, you can't confirm that a phone call has taken place between President Trump and President Xi of China post?
Well, I don't comment on the phone calls the president makes with foreign leaders.
Right.
Yeah, I think I've directed you to the White House. It's for the president to tell you who he's talked to. I'm not going to get in the way of those negotiations. Okay, let's talk now about some new reporting that came in overnight. I want to just go through it for you and for our audience. 3 U.S. citizen children have been deported.
with their mothers. Now, this is according to the Washington Post. The family's lawyer says one of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer, deported without medication or ability to contact doctors. The family's lawyers are also saying their clients were denied communication with family and legal representatives before being deported. And it's raising concerns about the issue of due process, that it's being violated. So let me ask you, is everyone on U.S. soil, citizens and non-citizens, entitled to due process?
Yes, of course. But let me tell you, it looks in immigration standing, the laws are very specific. If you're in this country unlawfully, you have no right to be here and you must be removed. That's what the law says. Somehow over the last 20 years, we've completely lost this notion that somehow or completely adopted this idea that, yes, we have immigration laws, but once you come into our country illegally, it triggers all kinds of rights that can keep you here indefinitely. That's why we were being flooded at the border. And we've ended that. And that's why you see a historically low number of people, not just trying to cross our border, trying to cross the border into Panama, all the way down in the Darien Gap. I mean, it's been a huge help for those countries as well. On the headline, that's a misleading headline. Okay, 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers.
It's just so hard to beat Marco Rubio when it comes to conversations like this. He knows every single details. All right. That is a misleading headline. All right. We deported illegal migrants. All right. And their kids went with them because they were underage.
But it wasn't like you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
Just to be clear, because I do want to get to the overhaul at the State Department, is it the U.S. policy to deport children, even U.S. citizens, with their families, and I hear what you're saying, without due process? Just to be very clear there.
Well, no. Again, if someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then you have 2 choices. You can say, yes, of course you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child. Or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. And then your headlines would read, U.S. holding hostage 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old while mother deported. So the parents make that choice. I imagine those 3 U.S. citizen children have fathers here in the United States. Yeah. They can stay with their father. That's up to their family to decide where the children go. Children go with their parents. Parents decide where their children go. Right. The U.S. deported their mothers who were illegally in America.
Mr. Secretary, I want to talk to you about this overhaul of the State Department. You slashed U.S.-based employees by 15%, actually less than what the White House was recommending, which was about 50%. It's my understanding. Are you finished with the cuts, or are more coming?
We haven't slashed anything yet. What we did is reorganize the agencies, because we have the world, the globe, the planet is the exact same size that it was 20 years ago. But the State Department is somehow almost, double the size. So the world hasn't gotten any bigger, but somehow the State Department continues to grow. But this is not just about saving money. It's primarily about making sure that every bureau and every office in the State Department is a purpose and it's fulfilling them and they work together. What this really is about is empowering what's called the regional bureaus and our embassies. We want to return more power and more influence and more responsibility to our embassies and to the regional bureaus that oversee those embassies. That's what this reorganization is about. The 15% you're referring to is, after we've reorganized, we're going to ask the bureau heads and the assistant secretaries, many of whom are career Foreign Service officers, to look at their bureaus and their operations and suggest to us 15% reductions. Suggest to us 15% reductions. Then we'll look at that. That's not an unreasonable number. But this is a reorganization that should have been done 10, 15 years ago. Multiple secretaries of state from both appointed by presidents, both Democrat and Republican, would have loved to have done it. I just happen to be fortunate to work for a president that allowed us to do it, that actually asked us to do it. And I'm excited about it. I think it's going to make the State Department more nimble, more effective, and it's going to empower our very talented diplomats to finally be able to do their jobs in ways they've been held back from doing in the past because of bureaucracy and redundancy within the State Department.
Mr. Secretary, very quickly, because we're out of time already, but Canadians, as you know, head to the polls tomorrow for their parliamentary Tuesday elections. Have you taken any steps to carry out President Trump's plans? He says he wants to annex Canada.
Any what? I'm sorry?
Any plans to carry out
I missed the last part of your question.
Absolutely. I'll repeat it. Have you taken any steps to carry out President Trump's plans, as he has said he would like to annex Canada? Have you taken any steps in that direction?
No, I think what the president has said, and he has said this repeatedly, is he was told by the previous prime minister that Canada could not survive without unfair trade with the United States. At which point he asked, well, if you can't survive as a nation without treating us unfairly in trade, then you should become a state. That's what he said. They'll have their elections this week. They're going to have a new leader, and we'll deal with a new leadership of Canada. There are many things we work with cooperatively on Canada on, but we actually don't like the way they've treated us when it comes to trade. And the president has made that point when he responded to the previous prime minister in regards to this.
So does the U.S. still want to make Canada the 51st state?
I think the president has stated repeatedly he thinks Canada would be better off as a state. And he has said that based on what he was told by the previous prime minister, who said Canada can't survive unless it treats the U.S. unfairly in trade.
All right. Okay.
This man is probably the greatest communicator I've heard in the Trump administration. All right, here we go. Democrats in front of Capitol.
Chair, we have experienced the joys and challenges of raising disabled children. We know what is possible because we see it. We live it every day. Thanks to Medicaid, we know what is possible.
Democrats sits down in front of the Capitol.
We also know what is at stake. We know what we might lose. We are so close to losing it, and that's why we're here. This is my very, very dear friend, Jamie Davis Smith, who we have roamed the halls of Congress together many, many times. And I am so honored that you're here, and I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thanks. Well, I can't believe we have to be here again. As Elena said, Little Lobbyists started in 2017 when a group of parents who didn't really know what we were doing decided to come walk the halls of Congress and tell our own stories and how much our disabled children rely on Medicaid and the joy they bring to our lives. And
Okay. Thank you. All right, what do you guys think about this?
Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend, Professor Alan Dershowitz of Harvard Law School. Now, Alan Dershowitz, I listened very carefully to the president of Harvard, and he says, we're victims here. All we're trying to do is have academic freedom. All we're trying to do.
What do you guys think about this Harvard situation going back and forth? What do you guys think about Harvard? I think this is the thing. Candace Owens has started saying that, I don't know if you guys know Candace Owens, but Candace Owens is a very huge conservative voice, and she's now saying she doesn't support what Trump is doing with Harvard and all of these Ivy League schools, or some of these Ivy League schools. And she's saying if Trump is a big advocate for free speech, why would he want to, in some way, shape, or form, suppress the ability to express yourself on campus? So this is what she's really talking about right now, and she's gone against Trump when it comes to this Harvard situation. And she's saying that nobody's telling Trump the truth. This is what this is true. She's saying this on a podcast, saying that nobody's telling Trump the facts, and if he's an advocate for freedom of speech, he shouldn't do what he's doing in Harvard. But so I'm asking you guys, what do you guys think?
do is hire the right people. Yet we have a horrific problem with anti-Semitism. We're trying our very best to get on top of this. Alan Dershowitz, you're a Harvard man. What would you like to say to the president of Harvard and all those who are making excuses for Harvard?
Just remember the 1950s in Southern schools when presidents of universities were saying, all we want to do is teach white supremacy to our students. All we want to do is have Ku Klux Klan people coming in with masks and harassing black students. That's part of our academic freedom. No, no, no. Harvard cannot use academic freedom as an excuse and a justification for teaching anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. It's a structural problem. It goes deep. The DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, is anti-Semitic to its core. Intersectionality, black theory, racial theory, queer theory, they're all part of this attempt to try to promote a worldview that is essentially anti-American, anti-Semitic. The universities are not doing enough about it. And so the federal government has to step in the way they did in the 1950s when they have to step in to prevent segregation and discrimination against black people. You cannot distinguish between discriminating against blacks on the one hand and discriminating against Jews on the other hand and Christians on the other hand. So the federal government has a role to play here, and it should play it constructively, and it shouldn't be afraid of taking on these claims of academic freedom and freedom of speech because they're applying a double standard.
And in fact, Alan Dershowitz, the Supreme Court had to admonish Harvard, didn't it, on submission policies when it was discriminating against Asians. So obviously, the government has some role to see what Harvard's doing, because Harvard has a long history in the 30s of playing footsie with the Nazis in the Third Reich. And they, even as recently as a few years ago, they had to be told, no, you can't apply racist policies against Asian students for the admission of this. They act like they're above the fray. They act like they're the ones promoting freedom, academic freedom and free speech and everything. It's quite the contrary, as you point out. And so my question to you is this. Hillsdale College doesn't take a penny in federal money. They don't take a penny in state money. They don't even take students that have government grants because they say, we don't want to be told what to do. From the left, they have to do X, Y, Z. And the left is always telling colleges and universities what they have to do when they run the government. And here, President Trump, and God bless President Trump on this, Alan, but here President Trump is saying, you know what? You don't get $2.2 billion in federal tax dollars. You know what else? You don't get a tax-exempt status. These are privileges on that massive endowment you have. You want to fund things, then go ahead and fund them. But we have some requirements. No, we're not interested in everything that's going on in the classroom and every professor you hire. But this is bigger than that. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, Harvard is cheating. I can tell you that from personal experience. The Supreme Court ruled that it could not use race as a basis for admission and implicitly as a basis for hiring. It still does it. It just disguises race in other ways. Now, nobody wants to take away federal funding for cancer research, Alzheimer's research. What we want to take away is federal funding for the Carr Center, for example, a center at the Kennedy School that promotes anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. We want to take money, federal funding away from the Middle East Studies Department, from other departments which are promoting propaganda. They aren't educating. They're not helping Americans. In order to get a tax exemption under the Jones case, you have to show that you're helping the national interest. And a lot of the things that Harvard is doing today is not helping the national interest. Look, Harvard's going to compromise in the end. How do I know that? Because I know the lawyers they hired. They hired 2 lawyers who were close to the Trump administration. So on the one hand, they're sending out macho statements, we're never going to compromise, we're going to fight every inch of the way. On the other hand, they're sending in 2 negotiators. In the end, there'll be a resolution. Money will go to funding research, scientific research, but it won't go to funding propaganda.
I just want to emphasize to the audience here, it's Donald Trump who believes in free speech and academic freedom. That's why he's taking these people on. And it
is just crazy work that Trump has won almost every lawsuit that has been brought against him, or the one he's brought to other people. Now, this guy just said This man was a professor in Harvard, and he said Harvard is going to cave. So virtually everybody is caved. Everybody that said, I wasn't going to, remember what President Sheinbaum of Mexico said. She was like, well, there's no way I'm not going to take the illegal migrant. Later made a song for illegal migrant to come back to Mexico. So it's like everybody acts like they're not going to kiss the ring. Then eventually it's like, oh, shoot, they just kissed the ring.
Donald Trump was trying to protect the Jewish students, not Harvard. And it's Donald Trump that has an all-of-government hands-on movement to fight anti-Semitism in this country, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit. And Alan, that includes these left-wing Jewish groups who are now attacking Donald Trump and really giving all kinds of aid and comfort to the anti-Semites out there, don't you think?
I agree completely. Look, Chuck Schumer the other day said they're using anti-Semitism as an excuse for the Republicans to be, attacked. No, Donald Trump, I know him, cares deeply about anti-Semitism, cares deeply about the American public, and I think he ought to be praised for his efforts in trying to prevent universities from being turned into propaganda mills against American values and against America's allies. So 3 cheers for what he's doing, and make sure he does it right so that research is not cut off from legitimate purposes, but it is cut off for illegitimate purposes, and Harvard has many of those.
Well, maybe another day we can discuss that too. I'm all in for legitimate spending of money, but I don't know why they're sitting on $53 billion in tax.
Godly. $53 billion in taxpayers' money.
Exempt money. If they want to do research on Alzheimer's, well, let them kick in some money. Let them do it. I happen to believe in research on Alzheimer's because I have a family with Alzheimer's. Well, let them kick in. I don't know why they're sitting on $53 billion in tax-exempt money. If they want to do research on Alzheimer's. $53 billion
in tax-exempt money. That's just crazy work.
Well, let them kick in some money. Let them do it. I happen to believe in research on Alzheimer's because I have a family member who suffers from it. We'll be right back.
Whoa, $53 billion. Lee. All right, Tom Homan, Border Czar. Here we go.
Joining us now is Border Czar Tom Homan. Tom, thank you so much for spending some time with us on this Sunday night. It's great to have you. I want to ask you right off the bat, how many other judges are expected to face consequences for obstructing the president's immigration plans?
We have no number for any judge that's going to obstruct ICE and their enforcement operations or knowingly harbor and conceal an alien is going to be prosecuted. This shouldn't be a surprise. I've been saying this since January 20th. You can sit by and support sanctuary cities. You don't have to assist ICE in being an immigration officer, but when you cross that line of impediment or knowingly harboring and concealing, we're going to seek prosecution. So she's probably first out of many.
Well, it's good to hear. Tom, Jason Chaffetz here. It sounds like the left, they want to talk about, they don't want to separate migrant families. And then they do, and then they don't. It's hard to follow it, just depending on where they're going. But they're pushing a false narrative that you're deporting children who are United States citizens. Watch this.
3 U.S. citizen children have been deported. One of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer.
3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers.
The Trump administration deported 3 U.S. citizen children.
There are reportedly other instances where U.S. citizen children were deported without any due process.
Unbelievable. Even though you're deporting the parents, Rolling Stone magazine is also pushing the fake headline accusing the administration of deporting children with cancer. Tom, what's your perspective on this?
Well, we don't deport U.S. citizens. We don't deport U.S. citizen children. But I've said also since January 20th that we're going to keep families together. And when an adult gets deported, they got a choice. It's not a government's choice. It's a parental choice. You either take the child with you or leave them here with a relative or the other spouse. Just because you have a U.S. citizen child does not make you immune from our laws. American families get separated every day. And in those 3 instances, if we would not have moved the child with the parent, the story would have been ICE deports mother without child, ICE separates families. No, that is going to be a family choice. If you choose to have a U.S. citizen child while you're here illegally, that's on you. But it's not going to make you immune from the law. You got to make a parental decision. Leave the child here or take them with you.
Tom Kevencourt, great to have you with us as always. I want to get your take on this Obama-appointed judge by the name of William Orrick. He's actually blocking the Trump administration from withholding funds from 16 sanctuary cities and counties for ignoring his immigration crackdown. Now, Orrick, you may recall, did the same thing back in 2017. So I guess the obvious question is, how might the administration fight this, especially as these cities and counties continue to flout the law?
Well, I think we'll win in court, but President Trump is right. Why would we keep funding a city that arrests an illegal alien over and over and over again, costing taxpayers not only crime in their neighborhood, but costs the police departments and law enforcement agencies time and court costs and law enforcement costs and all the costs associated with enforcing criminal law. So why would we keep funding people that simply don't want to work with ICE? I think we'll win this in court, and we've proven, President Trump has made it clear, I've made it clear, we're out there looking for public safety threats and national security threats. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we're chasing. If you don't want to help us, stand aside, but we'll win this in the long run. Sanctuary cities are going to continue to be sued, plus we're going to continue taking their federal money. When this gets to the appellate court, I think we'll win it.
Tom, Molly Lyon here. Would love to get your insight on this. ICE, the DEA, multiple other agencies busted over 100 illegals in a nightclub raid in Colorado Springs. This is kind of the new breaking news. Meanwhile, as you know, the border crossings are at an all-time low. The president posting very recently on Truth Social that only 3 illegals have passed through the border, putting the success rate at 99%. Nationwide encounters with illegals have plummeted as well under Trump's watch. Tom, what more can you tell us about all of this?
Well, look, the president's right. As we speak today, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation. And the data shows it. We had over 11,000 a day under Biden. The other day, we had 178. We got gotaways under Biden, a daily gotaway number, 1,800. The other day, 41. And you're right on the releases. President's right, three releases last month. Ever since January 20th to now, we released a total of 9 people. 4 because they're material witnesses in a criminal case. We wanted them to come. 4 were extreme medical condition. We couldn't remove them or they're at dire straits. And 1 was a humanitarian issue. On the same time frame last year, Biden administration, over 184,000 were released. 184,000 to 9. We got the most secure border in the history of this nation thanks to President Trump's out-of-the-box thinking. He's a game changer. I said from day one. He proves to me every day why he's the greatest president in my lifetime.
Yeah, and Tom, and all of this decline in numbers in such a short amount of time, it's really astonishing. But I have one more question for you. We are also learning that the suspect who allegedly stole DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's purse on Easter Sunday is an illegal alien. Authorities are still searching for a second suspect, but what more can you tell us about this crime?
Well, look, I think it's a bad choice. I mean, if you're going to rob from the Secretary of Homeland Security, that means you're going to do just about anything. So he picked the wrong target. They got right on it. He's now arrested. He'll be held accountable. Secretary Noem is a no-nonsense secretary, and she's going to continue to enforce the law. So I think this is a pure example of illegal aliens committing crimes across the cities, big and small, shoplifting, armed robbery, up to murder and rape of young women. Again, you look at what we've done since President Trump's been in office. ICE has arrested just under 70,000 illegal aliens in the interior, and Border Patrol's arrested another 34,000. CBP altogether arrested about 67,000. This administration is breaking records every day. ICE has already arrested 3 times more criminals in 3 months than Joe Biden did in a year, and we're going to keep it going.
All right. Well, Tom Homan, we really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for the discussion, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, they are doing an amazing job in terms of locking down the border. That is unbelievable. And hats off to the men and women who are doing it. And thank goodness for the leadership of Donald Trump to make that Now that they're actually starting to apprehend the people, we need to see the prosecutions and the deportations, because the deportations still have a long way to go. But these activist judges are putting the impediment to Donald Trump doing this. That is so fundamentally wrong. I hope the voters see right through it, see where the Democrats are actually fighting for, because they want to keep the criminal element here. There's no other way to look at it.
And I'm glad you said that, too. Keep this in mind. A lot of people have this misinterpretation of this whole issue that people who are here illegally or people who have come here legally don't want to see illegal immigrants who are criminal aliens deported. That's not true. Every single person I know who has come to this country legally is like, wave the flag. Yes, more of that. They want illegal criminal aliens out of this country just as much as native-born Americans do. The ones who came here the right way, the ones who waited in line, they're as patriotic about this issue as ever, and they are pleased, even if many of them are not Republican. I think by and large they're pleased with what the president is trying to do.
Well, you know, Molly, it's so interesting because we kept hearing from President Biden during the last administration that he couldn't do anything about illegal immigration. His hands were tied. He needed Congress to act, right? It doesn't square now. The president is doing it.
It is just shocking, astounding, the difference. You know, I mean, can't shine a brighter light on that difference. I think the judge thing that's happening here locally, with one judge being arrested and others saying they may not go to work, a liberal judge threatening to not go to work. I don't think the Trump administration is going to be like, no, please show up. I feel like that's an odd form of protest for any slew of liberal judges to choose to take. I feel like the Trump administration would be like, all right then, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
another court.
What do you think? Do you think we're going to see more judges trying to defy court or, defy their job, really, is what they're doing? I mean, do you expect that we'll see more of this?
Well, part of what they need to do is, in states like Wisconsin, they need to impeach these people.
Yeah.
If they're refusing to do their job because they have some sort of political agenda, they're demonstrating and proving to the public that they are not impartial arbiters of the law. That's what they're supposed to do. And if they can't set that aside and just rule on the law and take this and say, oh, I'm not even going to show up to work. I mean, how immature is that?
You couldn't have said it better. Do your job, or we will impeach you for not doing your job. And that would be the right decision. And I suspect we're going to see more of that happening in the months and weeks ahead, because I think a lot of lawmakers are fed up as well. They're saying, hey, listen, we can't sit here while, again, the separation of powers, you're going to hear me lecture a lot about that. That's a real thing, and that's your job. It's your responsibility. If you won't do it, we'll find somebody else who will.
Yeah. Well, we live in newsworthy times here, folks. Just stay tuned.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Whoa. Whoa. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. My boo-boo. She's everywhere tonight. All right, Pam Bundy.
But first, a Wisconsin judge under arrest and facing charges accused of flouting federal law to help an illegal immigrant. Federal prosecutors say Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan allegedly helped that migrant avoid arrest by ICE officers at the courthouse. It's a bizarre case and it's still unfolding. Hello, I'm John Roberts in Washington. Sandra, good to see you back again.
All right. Good to be back with you as well, John. I'm Sandra Smith in New York, and this is America Reports. So today's arrest of a judge marks the second such case in the last 24 hours. A former New Mexico judge and his wife were taken into custody yesterday. Federal agents arresting them for harboring a suspected Tren de Aragua gang member in their guest house.
For more on all of this, we are honored to have in the new U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi. It's good to talk to you, Pam.
Good to talk to you.
So let me read a little bit from the criminal complaint here. And Judge Dugan says, despite having been advised of the administrative warrant for the arrest of Flores Ruiz, Judge Dugan then escorted Flores Ruiz and his counsel out of the courtroom through the jury door, which leads to a non-public area of the courthouse. A foot chase ensued. The agents pursued Flores Ruiz for the entire length of the courthouse and ultimately apprehended him. According to this complaint, Judge Dugan was visibly angry that ICE was there to arrest Flores Ruiz, even tried to kick the deportation agents out of the courthouse.
Yeah, and to set the stage for you and Sandra, this was truly horrific. This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up two people, a guy and a girl, beat the guy, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital. And John, you know, it's so rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out, she goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave. While a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Wow.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What is going on here, America? What is Pam Bundy talking about? If this is true and all these judges are doing this, man.
You know, Madam Attorney General, great to have you here, and thanks for coming back on America Report. So we remember these words of Tom Homan, the border czar. This was March 17th, and his message on these judges who apparently are trying to get in the way of this administration's efforts. Listen.
I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
So when you see these judges trying to obstruct your efforts to make this country safer, what is your message to them?
We are going to prosecute you, and we are prosecuting you. I found out about this the day it happened. We could not believe, actually, that a judge really did that. We looked into the facts in great depth. That's her picture up on the screen, Hannah Dugan, who is now in custody. You cannot obstruct a criminal case, and really, shame on her. It was a domestic violence case of all cases, and she's protecting a criminal defendant over victims of crime.
In fact, she just had an initial appearance in court. There's also this other case coming out of New Mexico. Judge Joel Cano and his wife were arrested for harboring a TDA member at their home. The alleged TDA member had been picked up by law enforcement, and now he and his wife were picked up and arrested. And you say that you believe, as the Attorney General, that the person that they were having living at their home was a truly potentially bad individual.
Yeah, that's the judge up on the screen now who got arrested. Yeah, his name is Ortega. He was is a known TDA member. So he comes through Eagle Pass December 2023. He's living in our country. January 2025, ICE, they get a tip. Tom Homan's done a great job. Our FBI did a great job on this case, too. they get a tip that he is living with a judge and the judge's wife. So they have him arrested first.
That one is just on another level. Like, that's just on another level, ladies and gentlemen. How can you allegedly harbor a TDA gang member in your home where your wife stays? What are we doing here, ladies and gentlemen?
On immigration charges, a Judge Damian Martinez releases him, saying that Judge Cano has a good BS meter and wouldn't let just anyone live on his property.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the associations with this violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, and this person that they harbored in their home, he was showing signs through clothing, we were told, tattoos. There was evidence through voice messages and text messages of his association to TDA. So what charges will Cano and his wife face, if any?
So Judge Cano, soon to be former Judge Cano, got his charges were just unsealed. He's charged with obstruction. He admitted post Miranda. He took one of the TDA members' cell phones himself, took it, beat it with a hammer, destroyed it, and then walked the pieces to a city dumpster to dispose of it to protect him. The wife also is charged with destroying evidence. Sandra, not only that, this TDA member, and he had on a necklace that said kill, something about death. He had tattoos all over him. He also had on his cell phone pictures of two decapitated victims, decapitated, gruesome photos, and he was sending them out, and whoever he was sending them to was sending back saying, hey, you need to be careful. You shouldn't be sending these. You shouldn't be texting these photos out. Not only that, these two, the judge and his wife, gave him assault rifles that belonged to their daughter. That's what they're charged with. In the criminal report affidavit, he goes.
What in the world is going on here?
To a shooting range with these assault rifles, with a suppressor, with other known TDA members, and they're shooting. This is the last person that we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them.
Let me, if I could, Madam Attorney General, come back to the Wisconsin case and Judge Hannah Dugan, because in allegedly letting the perpetrator and the attorney out through a non-public exit and allowed them to get out in front of the building. We had a situation where we've seen that I know Tom Homan was complaining about in Colorado, where there would be no transfer of a defendant from a jail to ICE custody on a detainer request in a way that was orderly and protected public safety. They would dump them off in a parking lot, and then ICE would have to chase them around with the DEA or whatever, or FBI, and pick them up. This ended up in a foot chase in public sight. It says here, a foot chase ensued. The agents, and this was a DEA agent and an FBI agent, pursued Flores Ruiz for the entire length of the courthouse, ultimately apprehended him near the intersection of West State Street and 10th Street. So the judge apparently has created a situation here where you have a public foot chase. And we all know that, while sometimes they can come off without incident, they can also turn into very dangerous situations.
John, that's exactly right. She put the lives of our law enforcement officers at risk. She put the lives of citizens at risk. A street chase, which is absurd that had to happen. But yes, she put a lot of people in danger. That judge did it. So did the other judge. Judge Cano is charged with. They were allegedly giving him assault rifles, AK-47s, AR-15s, with a suppressor, a known TDA member, letting him go to a shooting range to refine and perfect his shooting skills. What's happened to our judiciary is beyond.
Oh my God. Pam Bundy, yo, she cooking. She said they gave him guns, AK-47, R-15s, to perfect his shooting. They gave him AK-47 to perfect his shooting.
me.
Yeah, so when the American public hears this and they think these were once upstanding people in their communities and their professions, and they put it all on the line for this, I mean, have you dug into their motive? Like, what inspired them to carry out these acts and harbor criminals?
They're deranged is all I can think of. I cannot believe. I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law, and they are not. And we're sending a very strong message today. If you are harboring a fugitive, we don't care who you are. If you are helping hide one, if you are giving a TDA member guns, anyone who is illegally in this country, we will come after you and we will prosecute you. We will find you.
If I could just finish off with this idea, very significant development that you're arresting judges now. Now, it could be that the judges have engaged in terribly bad behavior and deserve to be arrested. But you know what critics will say? They'll say, "Oh, this is a government that is expanding the powers of the Article 1 of the Constitution. Now they're arresting judges." How do you respond to that?
No one is above the law, John. No one is above the law in this country.
Hunter
if you
Biden,
are
baby.
destroying
Hunter
evidence,
Biden.
if you are obstructing justice, when you have
When somebody says no one is above the law, I just say Hunter Biden, baby.
victims sitting in a courtroom of domestic violence and you're escorting a criminal defendant out a back door, it will not be tolerated, and it is a...
I mean, yo, escorting suspect out the back door, that's just crazy.
crime in the United States of America.
Oh,
doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be prosecuted.
Madam Attorney General, great to see you in the studio.
Great to see you.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
your
you
time.
very much. Appreciate.
Ooh! Are we going to say these are corrupt judges? Is that what we're going to say, ladies and gentlemen? Are we going to say these are corrupt judges, or do we just let it slide? Do we let it slide or bring everybody to justice? I guess everybody would say justice at this point because, shoot. Why would you have an illegal migrant, well, a TDA, they're saying, allegedly, this person is a TDA gang member, in your home with your wife? With your wife. Oh, my God.
And now for the last look. This month, when President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on the world, he didn't just frame it as a smart economic reset, he called it a national emergency. Similarly, in January, Trump sought funding for securing the southern border by declaring a national emergency. And for a way to boost fossil fuel production, you guessed it, a national energy emergency. So far, Trump has declared 8 national emergencies in his first 100 days, more than any other president. That's according to the Brennan Center for Justice. The reason for this is clear. Invoking an emergency has come to mean that the president can bypass Congress, intimidate courts, and run roughshod over normal procedures, even civil liberties. And while the current number is striking, it's not a Trumpian innovation. Presidents have become addicted to emergency powers. Unlike many other countries, the U.S. Constitution says nothing about how to declare or end an emergency. This has allowed presidents to organically assume a wide range of powers. This usually happened during wartime. In the 1970s, after scandals of presidential overreach like Watergate in Vietnam, Congress imposed some limits. This led to the National Emergencies Act of 1976, which established a process to govern the use of emergency declarations. This included, crucially, a legislative veto, allowing Congress to override a president's emergency declaration with a simple majority. But in 1983, when the Supreme Court ruled that legislative veto unconstitutional, the result wasn't a curb on presidential power, but in fact, a framework that formalized its massive expansion. Today, Americans are living under dozens of ongoing national emergencies, mostly tied to foreign policy, like sanctions. The oldest standing one, targeting Iran, dates back to the Carter administration. Others come from the post-9/11 era, when Congress granted the executive branch sweeping new powers, all in the name of national security. Both parties have used emergency powers to serve their broader agendas. In 2022, President Joe Biden attempted to forgive student loan debt by using an emergency authority related to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the second Trump administration has broken all records. Earlier this month, Trump leaned on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to justify his tariffs. Also known as IPA, this is a 70s-era statutory power granted by the National Emergencies Act. And it lets the president act when there is a, quote, unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, or economy of the United States, unquote. While IPA authorizes a long list of actions, the word tariff does not appear among them. It's also worth asking, are trade deficits, something America has had with many countries for decades, truly extraordinary or unusual, or even an emergency? Many legal scholars say no. But the trouble is, courts are often reluctant to weigh in on issues of national security. In theory, reining in such abuse of emergency powers is simple. As the Brennan Center's Elizabeth Goitein suggests, Congress could reform the National Emergencies Act and require that these emergency declarations end after 30 days unless renewed. But presidents are obviously reluctant to sign away their own power, so passing it would require a supermajority, which is a 2/3 vote in House and Senate, to overcome a presidential veto. That's almost inconceivable in today's divided Washington, where one side is stacked with Trump loyalists. It's just one illustration, though, of how Congress has become little more than a feeble debating society rather than the first branch of government meant to put a constant and meaningful check on the second branch, the presidency. As Deborah Pearlstein, the director of Princeton's program in law and public policy, told GPS, these statutes were lying around like loaded weapons for a president who was not acting in good faith to use them. And in his second term, Donald Trump is pushing the boundaries of presidential power in a way that is well beyond what the Constitution envisioned. And yet, despite a distinct danger of creating a super presidency that would undermine America's democratic system, Congress and the courts have been largely acquiescent. When they wake up, it might be too late.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. God bless you guys for being here. With that being said, instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in Almighty.
Trump loyalists.
Believe in Almighty God. Thank you guys for being here. Double tap your screen. Subscribe to the channel. And join the channel memberships. It is $4.99. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. And if you are a veteran, I just want to say thank you for what you've done. And also I want to say thank you to the military personnel. You protect the homeland. God bless you. God bless your family. Take care of your kids. Hug your loved ones, because life is short. You never know when. So hug your loved ones and tell them how much you mean to them, okay? I know we talk about politics, okay? But life isn't just about politics, all right? So go home or go kiss your daughter or your son or your man or your girl, okay? Or your wife or your husband, all right? Just tell them how much you love them, because you never know, all right? Life is short. God loves you. God bless you. God bless the United States. And let's go. See you soon.